Thank you so much for being here. This is a great turnout. All these students that want to learn and learn how to study better, this is awesome. Plus you're getting a CLW. So welcome to our First Friday workshop. I'm Anne Marie Spain. I'm an academic advisor here in Student Success. I'm also the liaison for first generation students. We define a first generation student, you are a first generation student, I should say, if you do not have a parent that graduated with a 4-year degree. That means you're first gen. We began these First Friday workshops a couple years ago as a way to encourage and support our first generation students. While all students can benefit from our workshop, we know that first gen students sometimes may need that extra bit of help. We have hosted First Friday workshops on a variety of topics such as imposter syndrome, how to do research, balancing academics and extracurricular activities, as well as on self-advocacy. We have also heard from several of our faculty and staff who are first gen, and they have been gracious enough to share their personal stories about how they persevered and how they were successful so that you can feel like you're not alone in your struggles. Our guest speaker today is Danielle Brock. Danielle is Carson-Newman's Director of Student Experiences with a master's in post-secondary education and an education specialist in curriculum and instruction. She is also pursuing a doctorate in higher education administration and plans to graduate in 2025. Danielle possesses combined experience of over 25 years in the field of education, having taught in public schools for more than 15 years and has worked in higher education for over a decade. As a director, educator, mentor, Danielle has an ongoing commitment to enhancing the learning experience of her students. Her current research focus on metacognitive learning strategies is a testament to her desire for students to become expert learners and reach their full potential. Beyond her professional achievements, Danielle is married to the love of her life, Scott Brock, who coaches football here at Carson-Newman University. Together, they are passionate about their ministry to love, coach, and educate students at Carson-Newman. They are also proud parents of 2 adult children, a son, Brooks, a senior at Appalachian State University, and a daughter who earned her bachelor's degree from William Carey University. Danielle's most exciting news is that she will be a grandmother soon. Yay! We consider Danielle family here in Student Success because we love her, and she served as an advisor in our department just a few short years ago. So Danielle is going to give you valuable information and tips on how to become an expert learner, improve your grades, and study smarter, not harder. Let me introduce you now to Professor Danielle Brock.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here today, and this is something I am really, really passionate about. So my personal story, I think you assume that professors make straight A's, they were excellent students, everything came easy for them, then they got this doctorate, life is good, and they just are amazing at what they do. And that is not true. That is not my story. I struggled as a student, and I was average, if not below average, as a student in college. It wasn't that I wasn't a first-gen student. I just didn't have the tools and resources. I didn't know how to study. I went to college unprepared. And no one in my family, even though my mom was an amazing teacher, no one taught me what I needed to know, and she didn't understand my struggles. And so I think that a lot of us come to school not prepared, and we don't have the resources that we need. We'll talk a little bit about that. But a cool story, I was working on my research, waiting on a football game to start in my husband's office one day, and one of the coach's wives walked by, and she just got her doctorate a few years ago. And she's like, "What are you doing your research on?" And I told her, which is what we're going to talk about today. She's like, "Danielle, that's my story." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, I didn't think I was going to get into grad school." And it's a struggle, and it's just not that we want to be terrible students. No one comes to college saying, "I want to be average." But when we don't know what to do, we do about the least amount to get the grade that we want. And that's where we struggle. So let's get started. Real quick, everything I'm going to share with you today is nothing new. I didn't create this. This amazing woman, she didn't develop it either, but she's incredibly talented, and she wrote 2 books that I am just crazy about. And if you're going to be a teacher, I suggest you get both of these books. One is Teach Yourself How to Learn, that I do share in one of my classes. And I know I see some familiar faces, and you've heard me talk about this, but you get a refresher course. This one's Teach Your Students How to Learn, and it's amazing. She was at LSU. She's the Director Emerita of the Center for Academic Success, which is the Student Success Center there. She was also a chemistry teacher, and she discovered her story the same way. Went to grad school, and professor said, "How are you passing these classes?" "I don't know." And she was shocked. She's like, I'm a good student. "What do you mean?" He's like, "You don't know what you need to know." And so she started this adventure of this journey of figuring out what we needed to do. So real quick, I'm not going to read all these people and their grades, but I want you to know what I'm going to share with you today is data proven. I follow tons of TikToks and Instagrams like you do, but we're probably not watching the same thing. I love college study skills. I want to know what other students are doing. Everything I see is on this PowerPoint. They just call it a different name. It has thousands of different names, but it's all the same thing. So anyway, real quick, Joshua, the middle one, he did one thing different. Look at his grade, 68, 50, 50. And where they were underlined, that's where they changed to a strategy that I'm going to share with you today. And they turned their trajectory of their classes into a new direction and started passing their classes. He started making notes. He started reading his chapter, which I'm going to give you a strategy on reading today, and he started making notes in the sidebar, and that was a huge difference for him because the class he was taking, everything built upon the foundation of what he needed to know, and he needed to review, and he could go back and review his notes and then do well on the test. All right, moving on. So how did they do it? They're expert learners. They use metacognition, which means we've got to think about our thinking. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. And they studied to learn. They didn't just study to make a grade. And we get caught in that get her done mode. Check it off, I'm done, did my homework, moving on. And we do that get her done mode. And we've got to move on from that. So in high school, what do most of your teachers do in high school the day before the test? Gave you a study guide, you did the R word, reviewed, right? You did all of that. Guys, in high school, you learned everything you needed to know in the classroom. In college, statistics say you learn 1/3 of everything you need to know in the classroom. So that's saying 2/3, you're being the active learner. You're the one that's making sure you know what you need to know, not that high school teacher. And so things are different. And the last question is, if you'd missed class the day before, could you still pass the test? Probably would have made an A, right? All right, so what's the difference between studying and learning? Or is there a difference between studying and learning? What do you think? Anybody have any thoughts? You can interact with me. I'm going to try to move quickly because I do have a ton of information. I know you got class and I want to get through as much as I can. But ask me a question, stop me. I don't want you to be inhibited. But what do you think? Is there a difference between studying and learning? What's studying? Studying, I'm doing what?
You're like memorizing.
Memorizing things. I'm reviewing what I should already know, correct? Learning, oh, yeah, kind of a whole new thing. So which would you work, yeah?
I was just gonna say, maybe studying is, maybe you need to be prepared for it.
Okay.
And learning is like, learning stuff like, would you make maybe a mistake on or
Okay.
something.
What did I do wrong?
Yeah,
Okay,
what
good.
I did wrong.
All right, great. So look at the last question. Which task would you work harder? If I were to study to make an A or if I were going to teach the material? How many of you say teach the material? What if you studied as if you were going to teach the material? What if you took on that, I'm going to learn this because here's the deal. You're going to learn the strategy in a minute, that if you can say it in your own words, you know it. One of my Eagle guides in my LA 101 class, they were asking them, they're like, hey, well, what do you do to study? They're like, if I can say it in my own words, I know it, period. But we don't get to that point sometimes of being able to paraphrase and say it in our own words. Metacognition. So what is this big word that I talk about? Metacognitive learning strategies. This is where we're missing the gap in our information is we have to understand the process in our learning. We need to be assessing and thinking about how we're thinking. Because here's the problem. How many of you taken a test so far? Everybody's hopefully taking a test. Do not raise your hand now. How many of you did really great on that test and you feel good about it? And if you do great, and how many of you don't, you might not have to raise your hand. But let me ask you this. If you didn't do well on that test, how many of you said, next time I'm going to work harder? Next time I'm going to do more? And how often do we do that? I'm guilty. I didn't. I always said, I didn't want to make the grade I made. I wanted to do really well in my classes. I didn't know how. And I would say, I'm going to study harder. I'm going to study more. And my plan was, I didn't have a plan. It was, I'm going to study, which meant absolutely nothing in the whole scheme of things. And so here we are. We're doing the same thing over and over with expecting different outcomes. And what is that? When you do the same thing over and over, expecting something different? Insanity. We all have it. I know. So, we need to be problem solvers. We need to say, do I understand what I need to know? But how many of us do that? Because we're back to that get her done, check it off. What am I completing? How far? What do I have left on my list? I'm guilty. And we need to be aware how I'm doing in my learning. So real quick, I know you don't have paper and pencil or anything out, but I want you to do this really quick. We're going to look, I'm going to give you an exercise here, and I want you to look for how many vowels, counting the vowels in 45 seconds. Are you with me? Here we go. Ready? Go. How many words or phrases do you remember?
I remember octopus.
Wait, did you get it? Don't say it if you figured it out. I gave you a misleading question, and I'm going to tell you why I gave you a misleading question. My question was to count the vowels. Then I asked you what? I told you to count the vowels, right? Okay, besides you, because I think you figured it out. You might be the first one ever. How many of you remember 5 words? 7, 10? Okay, no. All right. So, look at the words again, and you might have figured it out. Look at the words again. Is there any way that these words are organized? Quickly, just a few seconds. Okay, so tell them how they're organized.
They're organized by like a number.
They're organized by numbers. 45 seconds. How many words can you memorize? Hold on, let me go back. Here we go. Memorize. Okay, how many can you memorize now? If I give you a trigger, and this is a great memory tool, we won't talk about memory skills today, but there's some great stuff. We need to have a retrieval method. If I say 1, what would you say? Dollar bill. If I said 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, bowling pins, 11, football team, 12, a dozen eggs, 13, unlucky Friday, 14, and 15. $quarter. So you were close. You got about 9 or 8, right? Okay. What was different about those first 2 methods? Number 1, I was real clear in my directions. But here, let me give you an example. When your professor says read chapter 1, you kind of do what I ask you to do in that first example. When that professor says read chapter 1, you think that means look at the heading, skim through it on social media, talk to my friends, I'm bored, I'm done, I didn't get it, moving on, right? So you kind of did what I said. Count the vowels. All I need to really do is just count the vowels. I don't memorize the words. That's what we don't need to do anymore. We have this thing called hidden curriculum. If you have me, I've talked a lot about this. Hidden curriculum is not meant to surprise you, but it is expectations your professor has of you. We expect you to read your syllabus. We expect you to go to class. We expect you to check your email. We expect you to read chapter 5 when I say we're on chapter 5. I had a student in student success one time coming in to me, talking to me about their biology grade, and I'm like, okay, did you read the chapter? Like, oh no, we don't have to read the chapter. I'm like, what? Wait, you're in biology, you have to read the chapter. Oh, no. I'm like, okay, I'm telling you, you need to read the chapter for this next test, and let's see how that goes. And they did, and their score went up. But they feel like if they're not told to do something, it doesn't happen. Well, that's hidden curriculum. It's expectations. Just like you have expectations of your professors, they have expectations of you. So, going back to this, reading chapter 1, I messed up, sorry. We knew what the task was. It was memorized. Number 2, when you learn something new, your brain wants to relate it to something it already knows. You knew numbers. She immediately saw it. She saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. She figured it out. Did y'all take a whole lot of time to memorize those things? Not really. I gave you less than 45 seconds, actually. But what happened was is your brain related it to what it knew. I had a retrieval method for you, which is really, really important. That's why when you study for that test and I couldn't remember all the things I needed to remember is because you didn't have a retrieval method. And now all of a sudden, you knew all those words without me really taking a whole lot of time to study. So you knew what the task was, you figured out how it was organized, and you related it to something you already knew. So that's what we need to do as students. And that's taking learning to a deeper level, not just in that get her done, check it off mode. So, what do we know about learning? It's active. And an oxymoron is that passive learning, when two words are opposite, we put them together to create a new meaning. Well, we're talking about active learning. And as I told you, 2/3 of your learning takes place outside the classroom. That is why it says for every hour you're in class, you should study how many?
2 hours.
I get it. Not all classes, maybe not your LA 101, but for your classes, that your histories and your math and your science and your nursing classes, if it's 2 hours outside of class, you should be spending time on those classes. So thinking about thinking, metacognition, how am I doing? Do I understand it? Am I assessing? What am I going to do? I'm not just going to say study, but what am I going to do? What am I really doing? And then we're going to talk about Bloom's taxonomy. That's a guy that created this great level of learning. Look at that real quick. Remembering, understanding, apply, analyze, evaluate, create. If I were to ask you in high school, where do you think most of your learning took place? Where do you think you really worked the hardest? And they asked high school students back in 2013, and I can tell you what they said. What do you say? Say what? I don't know. Somebody said something?
I said apply.
Apply. Okay, she says apply. Anybody else?
Understand.
Understand? Create? Cool. You must have gone to a really cool high school. All right. Anybody else? Understand. In 2013, they said they stayed at remember. I do think and they said that was an average. I do think some teachers are going to take you to understand, apply, and probably some analyze, depending on are you taking dual enrollment, are you taking some AP courses, where are you in your schedule? But they said predominantly it was remember. They regurgitated. You taught me in class, I spewed it back to you. You taught me in class, I spewed it back to you. Now in college, where do you think most people said they worked?
Analyze or evaluate.
Really good call. Analyze is where they said. They said analyze. Now, create, you probably see that in freshman level classes, and you can see it in your senior level classes. If you're in a senior seminar and you're taking all that information you've learned, and you're going to create something new, right? Nursing students, you're doing it all the time, right, in a sense. You're taking all you've known, and I've got to diagnose what's going on here. So you are working at a much higher level. But here's the problem. You went from high school to college, and was there a bridge? I went from this teacher who her job was to make sure, she probably told her principal, 80% of my students are going to pass my class. She's going to make sure 80% of, and she's probably going to make sure all her kids pass her class. College, guess what? We're not given a percentage. You've got to figure it out. And all of a sudden, you went from these teachers making sure everything was turned in, communicating with your parents to, man, now I'm on my own. If I miss class, if I don't turn anything in, if I skip class and there's a test, they may not let me make it up. It's just different. We've got to figure it out. We're not in high school anymore. We've got to make it work. And I know some of you are long past high school and have figured that out. but I talk a lot about that with my students. So how do we get to higher levels of metacognition? Study cycle is one way, and I have a handout I'll give you at the end if you want it. So it talks about what you should do. You should preview before class. This just takes a few minutes. Looking through your chapter, what are we going to talk about? Do I need to create a question to ask? Do my professors want me to ask questions in class? Some of them want you to engage. Some of them may not. But if you ask a question after or before class, that professor's going to go, Emma, she's really paying attention. She really cares about this class. It's going to make a difference, I promise. Go to class. You hear student success say this all the time. You got to go to class. Review. And they say within 24 hours, but honestly, before you go to bed, you should review your notes. And there's a lot of great note-taking strategies out there I can talk about. We just don't have time today. But that encourages you to review your notes. Make sure you're doing that. Study session. Don't just say, I'm going to study. That is not a plan. And we all know it. The best intentions with the worst follow through. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Now check. This is where metacognition comes in. Can I paraphrase what I'm learning and say it in my own words? Period. How am I doing? Is what I'm doing effective? If I didn't make the grade I want on this test, the first thing I asked my son, who's still in college, I'm like, okay, so did a lot of the questions come from your quiz? Did it come from your reading? Did it come from your notes? Did it come from your PowerPoints? I tell him he has to print everything off. You need to have everything all together so you can create a study guide. And he'll say, yeah, that first test, it seemed like I really need to read the chapters more, but I need to review my notes. But he sees a pattern. You need to study all the things, and you need to make a plan, not just I'm going to study. So here's what a study session looks like. Set a goal. Am I going to read? And I got a great reading strategy for you. Am I going to create flashcards? Am I going to create an outline? Am I going to create a study guide? So I'm going to print everything off. My PowerPoint, my notes. Is there a video? Is there a transcript from the YouTube video I need to look at? Y'all, that's another thing you need to do. If you watch YouTube videos, get the transcript and print it off. Read while you're watching. I do, as a student. Highlight what I need to know. Now I don't have to go back and review the video. I can review the transcript. But all the things you need to do, make a plan and be prepared, and then you study 30 to 50 minutes. And then you're going to take a break. I have to do all my homework on the weekend. I can't do my homework during the week as a student. So on the weekend, I can't write a paper for 12 hours. So I'll create an outline, and then I'll go take a break, and then I'll come back. And if I don't, I can't think clearly. I have to go take a break. I'll take a walk, I'll watch a show, I'll eat something, whatever. But take a break, and then go back and reassess. Where am I now? Can I continue on, or do I just need to review? Or do I need to start something new now and study something different to give my brain a break? And Student Success will tell you, hey, if you're studying for a test, whatever chewing gum or peppermint that you are eating or chewing at that time, have the same one when you take the test. Causes brain spikes, helps you retrieve that memory, and helps you remember what you need to take that test and pass. Did I get everything? I think so. Recap, and then, yeah. All right, so I'm going to talk about these strategies. We won't read them because I'm going to tell you right now. Strategy number 1, I'm going to give you 10. This is a reading strategy, and I'm going to tell you what, there's 3 steps to this reading strategy, and they are so good. I use them myself. Number 1, don't read. Don't read. Number 2, you're going to look, and you've seen this in all that SQ3R, SQ5R, SQ4R, it's all the same thing. Look for headings, italicized words, pictures, graphs, charts, whatever's it, a definition, a word you don't know, just look. Now, what I love about this is we have seen when we have to read a novel and there's tons of pages and there's nothing for me to look at, where do I go now? What's the last thing say? Just read what? Just read the first line of every paragraph. Now, let me put a side note in here. I do this with my reading because I have like 120 pages to read a week. I'm not going to sit down and read 120 pages at one time. So what do? I chunk my reading. So if I have 2 days to read 30 pages, what can I do? I could do 5 pages in the morning, 5 pages at lunch, and 5 pages at dinner. Next day, 5 pages at breakfast, 5 pages at lunch. Is that doable? It's a whole lot more doable than trying to read 60 pages in 2 days and one night, and I'm not going to retain it, I'm not going to remember it, I'm going to probably quit, and I'm done, and I haven't done what I needed to do, right? So, read the first line of every paragraph because there's nothing to look at. So I'm going to chunk my reading up, and that's really, really important. What am I going to do? Second step. Second step. Let me tell you why it's important to preview. I got ahead of myself. Why is it important to read and figure out what I'm getting ready to read about? Look at this paragraph. I want you to tell me what task this paragraph is about. A newspaper is better than a magazine. A seashore is a better place than a street. At first, it's better to run than to walk. You may have to try several times. It takes some skill, but it's easy to learn. Even young children can enjoy it. Once successful, complications are minimal. Birds seldom get too close. Rain, however, soaks in very fast. Too many people doing the same thing can also cause problems. One needs lots of room. If there are no complications, it can be very peaceful. A rock will serve as an anchor. If things break loose from it, however, you will not get a second chance. What task am I reading about? How many of you have read a chapter in your book and thought, what am I reading about? And we quit, right? What if I told you that's about flying a kite? Now look at it. Does it make sense now? A newspaper's better than a magazine. A seashore is a better place than a street. First, it's better to run than to walk. You have to try several times. It takes some skill, but it's easy. Even young children can enjoy it. If I didn't know it was about flight kind, we would not have a clue what I'm talking about, would we? That's how it is when we read. Previewing is so important. We need to know, what am I getting ready to study? Remember I told you your brain wants to relate it to information? You might be like, oh, I took biology in high school. Oh, I remember this a little bit. Okay, now I know where I'm headed. I know where I'm going to be going with this reading. All right, so step 2. This is so important. Step 1, don't read, look for things. If I have to, first line of the paragraph. Step 2, I'm going to create questions, but I'm going to write them down. Sticky note on a notebook piece of paper. I put page 271 if you don't want to write in your book, or if you're going to make notes in your margin. But I would create a question for every paragraph and write it down. Did you hear me? Why is that so important? Why is that so important? What happens now when I'm reading? What am I trying to do when I do start reading? Tina,
Find an answer.
I'm going to look for an answer. I'm reading with a purpose. When my brain's trying to think about, well, what's going on social media, or what's Ryan doing next door, my brain stops because I'm like, I got to answer this question. I got one paragraph. I'm going to answer this question. Your brain fights, but you still focus because you've got a purpose. I have an intention to what I need to read. I am reading for a purpose. I want to answer that question. Step 3. That looks like a lot, but I just put it all down there. Read one paragraph, stop, say it in your own words. Read one paragraph, stop, say it in your own words. I'm going to do that with paragraph 1. Then I'm going to paragraph 2. Read, stop, I'm going to say paragraph 1. I'm going to say paragraph 2 in my own words. Now, some of you are like, okay, Danielle, that is a whole lot of time to be reading. But what am I doing? I am doing more than reading. What am I doing? I'm learning. I'm studying to learn. And let's talk about this. Had I not been doing all this, would I finish the reading? Maybe not. If I did, would I understand it? Probably not. Probably would have quit, or I don't know what I'm reading about. But now I'm studying. I've created questions that I can go back and use, and we're going to talk about that. That's number 10, I believe, on my strategies. I'm creating a test that I can go back and study and review. I may need to change the question as I begin reading that, oh, that really wasn't a good question. Let me rewrite that question. I'm engaged, I'm an active learner, and I'm actually going to get done with what I need to get done. But again, go back to that chunking. Don't try to read 60 pages. This will be too long. But if I practice and I think ahead, I've got 60 pages to read, how am I going to chunk this and spread it out, then these steps are a whole lot more doable. And now I am studying as if I'm going to what? Starts with a T, ends with an H, has each in the middle. I'm studying as if I'm going to teach the material, right? And now I don't have to worry about making an A because I'm probably going to make an A. And I'm going to learn that material, and now I'm going to be ready for whatever comes next after it. So read, stop, say it in my own words, answer the question or rephrase the question, read, stop, go back to paragraph 1, paragraph 2. And you're not asking to repeat the whole thing. It's just, what's the main idea? Which leads me to step 4. Have you ever highlighted a whole paragraph? Should we highlight a whole paragraph? Again, I didn't know. And I was like, why is my book all yellow? That's just, there's nothing I can go back and study. The whole thing is ridiculous. When I say it in my own words, now I'm deciding what's really important in that paragraph, and now I can highlight. Or I'm going to make flashcards, or I'm going to redo my questions. I'm going to add more questions. I'm going to take some notes. I may have to watch a video. My daughter took philosophy in college, and she really didn't understand, and don't ask me about philosophy. She didn't understand some of the concepts. She had to write a paper on it. I said, okay, we got this. So I started Googling, and I found YouTube videos. So she went and watched an animated YouTube video, and all of a sudden she's like, oh, I got this. And she wrote her paper and got an A. But sometimes we have to take another step. You all have so much more at your fingertips than we ever had. We had books and that was it. Or you go to the library. You don't even have to come into the library. You have access to so much information at your fingertips that you can become an expert in anything you want to know. So I would just check and make sure. I would probably watch a couple of videos. Is it accurate? Does it align with what I'm reading? And now that'll make more sense to you. But yes, watch a video. Supplement what you need to do. Class notes. Maybe I need to take my class notes and highlight what's really important. Get my PowerPoint, my reading, my class notes. I'm not just reading. I am really engaged. I'm an active learner, and I am studying to teach this material. And I always tell my students, print your PowerPoints if they put them on there. Some teachers don't, but if they do, print them off. Or some people download it on their computer, and then they add notes to it. I see my nurses say, yes, take notes on your PowerPoint if you have to. All right, so let's get to why textbooks are so important. What's that word up there? What could that word be?
Cat.
Cat, it could be cot, it could be,
Kite.
well, just one letter.
Kite.
Cot, cat, or cut. But let me ask you this. If we did not have the words cat, cot, or cut in our language, in our culture, could you fill in that blank?
Yep.
You could not. Did you go to school to be a biology teacher? Are you the biology teacher? You are not. Do you have gaps in your knowledge? Yes, you do. Okay. This is why textbooks are so important. Your college professors were not hired because they got this amazing teaching degree. Do you know why they were hired? Because they got some amazing biology degree, or an English degree, or a math degree. They have all this knowledge, and their intention is to give you all this knowledge. But if you do not read the textbook, you are basing that test on only what they've given you in notes, correct? What is your teacher giving you a test on? Is she giving you a test on what's written in your notes? She's giving you a test on all the knowledge that came from that chapter. And she intended to give you all the information, but remember, you only got a third of it in the class. They probably didn't get to everything because it's in the textbook, or we talked about it for a second. You needed to take it and dive into it deeper. That is why we cannot assume that we're going to fill in those gaps. They are creating that test on the information they have, not on the information you have. And that's why you need to do all the things. Textbook, notes, PowerPoint. Do I need to watch a video because I'm still not understanding it? Do I need to go meet with that professor? Go to their office hours. That's why they're there. Go and ask questions. Get a deeper understanding if you have to. So read your textbook. Number 6. Go to class and take notes by hand. Why is that so important? I feel like I'm flying through this. Am I going too fast? Y'all staying with me? Okay, why are taking notes by hand so important? Derek might remember. Why are taking notes so important by hand?
So like you can remember, because like when you type it, like you don't really remember.
Okay, so when you're typing, you're only doing this. Looking at my nursing students reminds me, my daughter thought about nursing for about a day, and we went and visited a school that she was going to go to, and they were like, hey, we really just don't advise you to take notes on your laptop. Although there are great things out there. There's AI stuff that will take notes for you. You can turn your microphone on your Word document. It'll take notes for you. I never say don't just do that one thing. If you're allowed to do that, I'd also take notes by hand. Why? Number one, my blood's flowing. I'm probably an active learner. I need to be engaged. I don't need to tune out. But also, when you take notes by hand, you typically have to paraphrase because you can't write as fast as you can type if you're a good typer.
You also said like if you do like the microphone, like it's just like a bunch of words. So there's no like punctuations.
Very good. If I use that microphone on my Word document, which I've tried it in my class because I want to know what's working for you all. If I just use the microphone, now granted some of you need to do it because you're missing some stuff. You can't write fast enough. There's a lot going on. I need to know everything that professor said. But when I finished my document, it was one solid paragraph. Now, if it matters a lot to me and I go back in, I can go back in and clean it up and create notes, and that's gonna help me study if I'm really engaged in doing that. But how much are you gonna do it? Do you know yourself well enough? Are you gonna do it? Are you gonna make flashcards and read the flashcards? I never did. I won't use flashcards. Some people, that's exactly what they need, and they do great with it. The microfilm thing might work really well for you. It didn't for me. But I just saw on TikTok the other night, there's a new, it's free for a short time, but it's called, what, do you remember, Derek? Was it Study Technology? It'll take notes for you on your laptop, and it actually sorts it out for you. Never played with it, don't know much about it. It intrigued me because it's a note taker. There's some great things about AI. We're not here to talk about AI, but don't do the bad things with AI. Do not let it write papers and do that. Don't do that. But there's some cool things about AI that you can check into. But taking notes is one cool thing I thought, but I don't know how well it works. Another thing is, if you're somebody who falls asleep, professors monotone, they talk like this, they're just real quiet, you're trying to stay awake. So what I suggest, and I tell my athletes this all the time, you can go to Counseling Center, they'll give you one for free. I have about 5 in my office. Is while you're taking notes, you can squeeze. Why is that good? I'm holding my paper down, I'm taking notes, but my hand's squeezing. What's happening?
People are full.
Blood is flowing, it's helping me to stay focused, I'm not bored, I'm moving. And there's nothing wrong with doodling while you're taking notes, as long as you don't get too deep in thought and you're gonna miss something. But if you can doodle and stay on track, that's fine. But this keeps me focused. My blood is flowing, I'm moving, and I can still take notes. So it's a good thing to try if that's something you need. And another thing that's not on my strategy, I tell a lot of my athletes, which made me think of that, a lot of times when you were taught to study, you would sit down at a desk and you would start studying. Some of you, that might not work. Maybe you're that person that needs to walk around the room while you're reading. That's okay. Maybe you need it on audio and you need to look at it. I do. I'll find a free PDF if I can, and I will have Speechify, which is a free Google Chrome extension, and it'll read it to me while I'm reading it, and I'm doing both. And I can pause it and take notes, hit play again, and I'm listening. Or if I'm driving down the road, I'm traveling somewhere and I need to get a book done, I can listen to it. So there's lots of tricks that we can talk about that will help you with reading. Just ask me and I will help you. So take notes by hand. You can use your laptop, but do both. Because then you're disengaged. You're like, well, my laptop's getting it, and you've checked out. Don't do that. Don't check out. Use your homework. You have all the answers right here. Chegg will give you all the answers. The problem with that is what? What's the problem with that? I'm not saying don't ever use it, but what could be bad if we use Chegg and we get all the answers on our phone before we ever practice the problem? What's the problem with that?
Read the question and the answers.
I don't know how to work the problems. If my goal is to just turn in my homework and write and it's all right, then I haven't learned, have I? I really haven't learned how to work the problem. So the thing to do is practice the problem, try it out, and then go find all the answers you need. Did I do it right? Ask AI, did I do this problem? I asked AI how to do a math problem one time. It told me exactly what to do, to the T. I knew the answer, and I wanted to see if it could tell me the steps. It told me all the steps. Don't do that before you try, because when you take the test, guess what? You're not going to have that. Don't steal your opportunity to learn. Use it as a backup to see, did I do it right? Because here's the thing, your professors don't care about getting the right answer. They want to know, did you learn how to do it, right? They want to know, did you learn the process? And if you're going to make mistakes, where is it better to make mistakes? On the homework or the test? Yeah, it's better to make the mistake on the homework. There's your time to practice. And you could probably find more problems online to continue the practice if they didn't give you enough and you really want to make sure, am I ready for this test? So do your homework and test your knowledge. Number 8, students as teachers. Guys, this is huge. 90% of what you retain is what you tell someone else. And let me give you a secret. Nobody has to be there. I can tell that wall everything I need to know about time management, and I can teach that wall. But I will know something when I'm done talking. I will know how much I know, and I'll know what I don't know. I will recognize gaps in my learning so that I know where to go back and study more, right? Saying it out loud is huge. How many of you ever taught anything? Sunday school, VBS, you're teaching a lesson on something. All of a sudden you become this expert, don't you? Because you studied as if you were going to teach. And now you're saying it out loud in your own words and you know what you're talking about. Same concept. Be in the teach the material mode, not the make an A mode. That is a big difference for students. And then number 9, how many of you work in pairs or groups? My nursing students don't? Okay. Pairs and groups are so valuable. Why? Because I can tell him what I know, and he can tell me what he knows, and we can take turns, and then I can say, oh yeah, I didn't hear her say that. He's like, yeah, she did. She said that. Here's in my notes. I'm like, oh gosh, I just realized what I don't know. And that reveals gaps in your learning as well. But I was talking to one of my classes earlier this week, and they said, I'm afraid people are going to think I'm dumb, or I don't know as much as I should. And I was like, you know what's funny about that? Is probably everybody's thinking that, and that's not even true. You know, I'm taking all my classes online, but we meet synchronous. So it means we're online, but we're on this Zoom face call, and we're doing our doctorate classes, and we're putting groups. And I thought the same thing too. I'm like, I'm going to be with all these people working on their doctorate, and I'm going to be like, I have no clue what you're talking about. But you know what I found out? We were all in the same boat. We're all trying to figure it out, and we're talking about what we know, and I learned from them, and they learned from me, and you need to break that barrier down of what people are going to think about you. You don't have to offer anything. Maybe at this point you're like, I just really want to sit in and listen, and I bet you before the conversation ends, you've jumped in because you know more than you realize you do. Or, hey, let me practice saying that back to you, because that was really good. Let me try to say that in my own words? Absolutely, because here's the deal. If I'm hearing you practice, I'm learning. If I'm telling you, I'm learning. We're all learning, whatever's going on. I tell my students, when my daughter, we were in Mississippi, Scott was coaching at a junior college, and I taught there. And one of the biology teachers came to me, and she's like, hey, I got like 5 football players who are going to fail biology. And I'm like, what? My daughter happened to be in the class with them. She's like, I'm thinking about asking McKay if she'll do a group study. I'm like, absolutely. They come to the house. We lived on campus in a house. And I come to the house, we'll have cookies and have a study group. We did it about 2 or 3 times. Not one football player failed. Not one football player failed. And why? Because they talked. And not everybody talked. I sat in there the first night, so I was like, I should really kind of see what's going on. Where are they in the scheme of things? How are they going to study? I wanted to see what they were going to do. And she and another friend got together, and they all talked through the chapters. They just talked through them. And all of a sudden, things they hadn't heard or made sense, all of a sudden made sense. It's a simple thing. Communicate, work together, help each other out. Get to know people in your classes. Stop being afraid of, I'm going to fail. Go to peer tutoring. Mackenzie's got people up here to help you. That's kind of like studying in a pair or a group. And you might meet somebody from your class, and you know what? Mark might be in on Tuesday's class, but I'm on Monday, Wednesday, but we're still studying the same thing. We don't have to be in the exact same class. If he's got the same professor and we're on the same track, hey, I can study with Mark. But you might meet somebody in that peer tutoring, so do that. That is huge. I go to the Writing Center online where I'm going to school. I don't submit a paper without them looking at it. I would not submit a paper here if I didn't go to the Writing Center, because those students know your professors. They know those teachers, and they know what they're looking for. Number 10, very last thing, create a test. PowerPoint, syllabus, videos, my textbook, class notes, whatever you have. And this is where pairs and groups are really good. Oh, and remember that we're reading the chapter and I'm creating questions? I already have some questions written, right? Out of my reading. Now I just got to go back and add questions from my notes. And so Kaylee, she's going to take chapter 3, I'm going to do chapter 2, and he's going to do chapter 1. We've got a test. And if we don't want to meet, guess what? We don't have to. We can do a Google Doc, Google Doc. And we can all put, hey, you put chapter 1 on, we all have it done by Thursday, and then we'll put our answers in and see how we're doing. You don't even have to meet if you don't want to, but create something together, and then I can see their answers and my answers, and what would I have put? Did we have the same thing? Test each other. Work together. You've got to make a plan. These are the plans that you can do. Make a test, and you've already started that. So top 5 reasons students do not do well. Don't spend enough time on the material. I'm guilty. You guilty? Number 2, started homework too late. Didn't memorize the information they needed. Did not use the textbook. It's huge. Number 5, I thought I knew. I thought I understood it. But I never really practiced it, saying it in my own words. I thought I knew it, but I didn't. 5 reasons students made an A. These are the top 5 reasons. I did preview and I reviewed after class. I did a little homework. I used the book and I did the suggestion problems. I told my son, don't you ever tell me extra credit is not an option. You do all the things, all the extra credit, all the optional things. Even if it doesn't help your grade, it's helping you learn and understand, right? So then I made flashcards and the information I had, and I memorized what I had to memorize. And then I practiced saying it in my own words. That is huge, saying it in your own words. So metacognitive strategies. Solve the problems without looking at the answers. Memorize what you need to memorize. Always ask questions. Test your understanding. Give yourself mini lectures. Give somebody, give a fish, I don't know, whatever you can do. Talk to the poster, talk to a chair, give a lecture. Spend time on each course every day. Every day. Even if it's just for a few minutes. Even if it's just, okay, all I got today, I've just got 10 minutes. I'm going to review. I'm just going to look through it. You've already started the studying process. Visit the study, use the study cycle with the intense study sessions, and I have a handout on that for you. Go to Student Success, go to the Writing Center, go to peer tutoring, and don't do a little to get the grade you want. Aim for 100%. Hey, I want to do well. I promise you, you will. If that's your goal and you do the things you need to do, you will. And I'm not saying put a whole lot more time. Now, maybe you might need to put some time in because that's not been something you've been doing. But maybe you need to just work smarter and have a plan of what you're going to do to be successful. Real quick, a professor from New Mexico State, I love this. 2 groups. First group did not use strategies, second group did. If you look at the bottom, it says students who did not use strategies. The first average on exam 1, 58. They didn't use any metacognitive strategies. Second exam, 54. Students who did use metacognitive learning strategies, 95, and the second exam was an 80. Professors are even taught how to incorporate metacognitive learning strategies in their classroom and to make sure you're using them. Again, going back to Dr. McGuire, the books that I use, she was a chemistry teacher, and so she does a lot with STEM, but she's like, it doesn't matter if you're STEM. It works with every field. But really worked a lot with this professor, showed him, and he taught his students, and that's what happened with his students. Third test, here's what they did. They did homework early, they read, they spent more time on the material, they started studying earlier, don't wait till the night before, did their homework, studied for the class almost every day, worked in pairs, and the average went from what, 65.7 to an 80.5. I'm not talking about miracle stuff. I'm just talking about some little things you can do that make a huge difference in what you can do in the classroom. So what can you do now? You can use metacognitive learning strategies. Spend more time. Think about that. For every hour, I need to study 2. Aim for higher levels of understanding. Bloom's taxonomy. Am I just remembering? Do I understand? Can I apply it? Can I analyze it? Can I evaluate it? What can I do? Can I create something out of what I know? Study groups, pairs, study cycle with intense study sessions. Go to your instructor's office hours. That is huge. That's why they're there. Study smarter. And if you don't use one of those 10 strategies that I told you, guess what? You probably never will. Now, I know I've thrown a lot at you. I love college study skills. I love helping you become a better student. These people back here, Mark and Tina and Mackenzie and Emery, they love helping you ask questions. If you're doing something right now and you're like, I don't know how to start, come and talk to them. Come and talk to me. I want you to, I love this stuff. I want you to be a better student. We do not want you to struggle. Come and ask these questions because we're here, I keep saying we, they're Student Success. They're here to help you. They want to help you be better. They are not there to tear you down and embarrass you or humiliate you. Student Success is amazing. They want to help you be a better student. And it's not that you're failing. Hey, I want to be a better student. I got a B. I want an A. What can I do to do different this next time? Let them help you because they can. And it's just simple strategies, things you need to do. All right, any questions? I know I've thrown a ton of stuff at you.